What's up, guys? Welcome back to WRX Garage. Today, we are going into part 2 of one of our previous series that we started. We're working on my STI Brembo Swap. So if you guys remember last time, we'd cleaned them up. We had, inspected what we needed to do. I have all the parts I need, except for a couple other things that we'll need for part 3, but we have a really cool, we have some cool products coming there too. So today, we got the calipers back from paint, from powder coating. Shout out to Central Connecticut Coatings. You guys are awesome. They did an amazing job helping me out with these calipers and helping decide, what's the best way to do things. They actually saved my butt a little bit by having them, they decided to have me split the halves apart just to make sure that when they put them in the ovens for the powder coating, they weren't baking the internal rubber seals on the inside. So they really saved my ass there. But let's see what they actually look like. Obviously, there's going to be a concern of keeping these nice and clean and keeping these clean, but we do have our decals we need to put on. I need to tighten down and torque all these bolts down, which unfortunately I can't do without a vise. So I'm heading over to my buddy's place, put these in the vise, torque those down. We're going to do a little bit of thread repair. And then we'll come back here. We're going to be painting some of these exposed bolts, putting the decals on, clear coating all of these, and then finally we're going to be going in and replacing all of the pistons, the internal seals, all that good stuff, the bleeder valves. And then finally, last thing, to keep these extra clean, we're going to be using G-Techniques C5, and this is a ceramic coating specifically made for wheels and calipers. I'm going to be doing 2 layers, which is probably a little overkill. This is an amazing product. You guys saw one of our last videos where we put this on our wheels, and honestly I love the way it came out. So we're going to be doing this, 2 coatings, and yeah, that's about it for today. So let's hop in the car, head over to my buddy's place who has the bench vise so I can get these torqued down, and let's start the project. All right, guys. So got a nice bench vise here. What we're gonna be doing is just torquing down those bolts. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to really find any specific torque parameters for these, just because whenever you're rebuilding something from Brembo, they kind of are secretive about, the way all their stuff is designed. So a lot of places, a lot of people are just like, use your common sense, torque them down to what you think is appropriate. So of course I'm putting a nice rag in there to make sure we're not scuffing up any of the nice powder coat we just did and just worked on. So the annoying thing about these little ones, I'm only going to show you again one of each, one of the small ones and how I do one of the big ones. So each of these are actually socket heads. What I'm going to be doing is I have to open these up, put a seal, an O-ring right in the middle here, put them back, and I'm going to be putting some nice red Loctite on there and just basically cranking as hard as I can, because we don't want these to leak and we want these as solid as possible. Again, we want to just take a nice up close look. These look absolutely gorgeous, and they did an amazing job with this powder coat. So the key, I think, for these, to make sure that we're doing this the right way, I think the key is honestly going to be tightening across a little bit, instead of going all the way on one and all the way on the other. We're going to just make sure that pressure is applied evenly all the way down. we can see the inner mechanisms, the inner workings here pretty well, which is nice. And of course, the one that I split on the other side, I'll give you guys a quick close-up here. Focus. This right here is where our seal is going to go. That goes in between the two halves. So if you can imagine, you have the other half here that goes on top. You need brake fluid going from through to both halves of this caliper. So right here is where that O-ring is going to go. And I'm going to go grab them because I saved the original ones because they were in really good shape. So I'll go grab those. I'll be right back. There we go. So red Loctite, not too much, not too little. And we are going to be making sure that when we put these down in there, that red Loctite is not, you know, going in the wrong spots. But again, because we don't have those specific torque specs, we don't really have the exact torque specs, I'm gonna be using red Loctite because let's be honest, once I do this once, I don't want to be splitting these halves open again and again. So that is why I'm using red and not blue or anything like that. Okay, so again, just hand tight on both sides because this one is not being too heavy. There we go. Because we don't want to over tighten one side and have an unevenness. We want the two faces of those plates as flush to each other as possible. So again, I'm just be doing quarter, 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 quarter. And I think that's what I'll be doing until they're nice and tight. So that's quarter, quarter, again. That lock's in there sitting overnight. Pretty sure you're gonna be just fine. Give it some good heat cycles. That's one you just need to deal. Throw all that in. This one. I think that's about it. That's all we can do. So I'm gonna be doing that one more time with the other small one, and then I'll show you guys again on one of the large ones because that has some larger bolts instead. And let's just take a look at these and make sure we do not damage. So one little scuff mark there and there. That's okay. We're gonna be touching up these anyways. We're gonna be touching up actually these bolt heads anyway with some white paint. So even if I scratch them up in the vise a tiny bit here, I'm gonna do another layer of towel, soft towels to make sure we keep those nice and safe, but cool. All right guys, so we have the big guys, the big front ones in here. So I'm just gonna be doing the same thing, taking these bolts out. Putting the inner half seals in there. Pretty cool. There's our fluid channel. Let's grab one of our little seals. For those of you wondering, Subaru does not sell these. So that is one of the main reasons why I'm reusing the original ones. But also, they're in pretty good condition. So right there.
I'm gonna call shenanigans on that one. I feel like if you turn everything properly, you're supposed to do the right way. Doing this in smart combos, there's no issue with it. Obviously, that's a big caveat, but doing the right research, getting the right parts, sealing things the right way.
A lot of you were probably thinking, why isn't he using a drill to put these down in a little quicker? With things that are very intricate, especially when you're doing old restoration and things like that, you want to just absolutely reduce eliminate as much possibility of you cross-threading something or, messing something up. So for this, I'm just going to be torquing everything down by hand the right way. I'm going to be using my torque wrench. And for a bolt this size, let's start with 85, because that's like, how much you put on lug nuts. So let's just start with 85 and see how it feels, and I can still turn it more, crank it down a tiny bit more. Then I guess we'll go from there. But with the Loctite in place and letting that set, the Loctite set overnight. And then we're also, if you remember, we're going to be topping these off with some paint. The paint's gonna do a couple things. It's actually gonna help weatherize these by creating a seal around the bolts heads and making sure that reduce the amount of grit and grime and moisture going down into the contact point where the threads are. Same thing on the other side, because with these big ones, if you remember, the bolt heads on the opposite side are exposed, so that you can see it right there. So putting a layer of paint over this is gonna help seal that out and weatherize it. So let's do 85. See how it feels, and I guess we'll go from there. So be sure, 85 foot-pounds, same thing, we'll start with this guy. So what are we doing? Because we're going to turns again, make sure that we're putting even pressure across each bolt head. It's not the nicest place, but I guess we're not. You choose it. That one. That one. See the other ones again. Okay. So those are on there good, 85. What I'm going to actually do, just because if you remember, there's a layer of powder coat under the heads of these bolts against the frame here, which we just squished down. If that depressurizes a little bit or slides around a tiny bit overnight when everything's setting, I'm just gonna, before I paint these tomorrow, again, check the torque specs. And if I don't, if I can go a little bit more, that means that, we moved the powder coat underneath a little bit. So, because we did just crush it. So, cool. That's what we're doing for now. For this one, we have one more of these. I thread locked all of these. I have one more big one to work on. So I'm gonna do that. And then I'm gonna go through and paint these. I'm also gonna be looking at some of these threads and seeing which ones I have to repair. I do have to wait for another helicoil kit because the fronts for these bolts, these ones here that actually mount to the knuckle of the car, these, or the hub, whatever you want to call it, these are M12 by 1.5, and then in the rears they're M10 by 1.5. So here's a helicoil kit. Well, it's a not name brand helicoil, but these are the M10 1.5s that I can use on the rears. So I'm gonna be doing these today. I'm still waiting on the other ones, so cool. I will do that, see if I can film some of that thread repair and see what I can do for you guys. But I'm not sure if I have the right drill bit size, so we'll see, but cool. All right, guys, so I did decide to retap this just to be super, conservative. I'm not gonna drill it out. Big tap, holy. Okay, I guess I will drill it out.
lined up well.
Every couple turns, a quarter turns, you want to back it out. Get some of those shavings out. Otherwise, things get really crunchy really quickly, so. If you have cutting oil, it's even better. If you don't, WD-40 will just work perfectly. When you guys are going back in, make sure you're nice and even and perpendicular with that plane, otherwise you're just going to be cutting new threads every time you go down in there. And you do not want that. Alright, and that's all she wrote. So I'm going to clean this up. Get some nice fresh threads. And for those of you who are not quite sure what a helicoil is, essentially what you do is you're drilling out and tapping out a slightly larger thread, and you're taking a new set of threads like this. Let's see. Like that, and putting it down in. I'll try to put a diagram up. Down in to those newly made threads. So I need to clean this out, of course, but then what this does is it's self-tightening. And you have the new threads, which are the right size for the new bolt. And you have brand new threads for whatever bit of material you have. All right, so we have our little inserter tool. We have our thread locker, which we're putting on the outside of the helicoil, which means that it'll be on the actual threads themselves. So we don't want Loctite on the bolt that's going into the helicoil. So let's get that down in there and installed.
It is a bit lighter originally than the outside threads, but it compresses down, which means it's pushing back out against the thread that you just made. Also not plugged in. It is going nice and easily.
So let's just check with our bolt real quick, if I can find it. This is the right bolt size. It goes here, yep. So let's just make sure it goes down into there the right way. That is absolutely perfect. It's nice and smooth. It's the right size. The right size thing is this is really important, guys. So next we have to break off the tang, which is kind of funny, but basically to install that, to be able to screw it on, let's see if you guys can see this. At the bottom, right in the middle there's that little piece that's like pointed out. And when you're installing it, holds on to this piece so you can turn it. But obviously we don't want that in there. We want our bolt to be able to go slightly through past it on the other side. So what you do is you take a punch and you break off the tang in the bottom. Just like that. Let me make sure it's actually still off of that. It is not, so let's give it one more go. There it goes. Oh my goodness, I'm so happy that worked out well. That's actually not as hard of a process. It's a little scary, but it's actually not as hard of a process as I once thought. So, hard stuff done. I'm gonna go pick up some white paint. We're gonna paint the heads of these bolts. And then tomorrow I will be putting the decals on the faces, clear coating the entire thing, and then ceramic coating. So, cool. we are going to be going in and installing the internal seals, put those pistons back in. So these are the original Brembo brand internal seals. I've heard online that there's some other ones, so a lot cheaper ones than this. Got a nice cold brew here. Hit me up if you want a DIY cold brew method that works really well. But Centric also makes some of these internal seals for these. I've heard bad things. If you're gonna do it right, you might as well do it right. So I went with Brembo brand. We're gonna be using some nice brake parts lube. This is the good stuff. This is what you're gonna be using on all of those seals, just to make sure they're nice and lubricated and they slide around really well in there. So let me clean off those pistons and get the show on the road. These little guys are going on the inside barrel, right down inside. The other ones are going on the actual calipers, or the pistons themselves. Next, and this is the best way that I've seen people do it, to install this little lip. Install this little lip on the piston itself, and this big seat is going to be pressed down into the caliper. So again, take a little bit of lube. We're just going to go to town here. Get this all nice and gooey. Not seated right, you just have to pull down and it'll basically seat itself. So down into the caliper here. Push it in, and then we are going to be pushing down on the seal, just like that. Let's see if I can get you guys to focus without getting my lens all greasy here. So that's one completed side, and that's about it. On to the big guys, the big ones in the front, so the 4 pots. So obviously same thing. We have those 2 internal channels right down in there where my finger is. That we're doing those internal seals there. So all 4 on each one. And then same thing, we're doing the big main outer seal as we press those, after we press the pistons in. So let's get that done. So one thing you need to worry about and look out for on these front pistons, the front calipers, you'll notice that this one is smaller than this one. So I have the pistons sorted by size. So when we're putting these in, we just want to make sure that we're putting the right size seal on the right piston in the right hole. So. So one important thing I want to note for you guys is that this stuff right here, the Permatex brake lubricant, brake parts lubricant, come on, focus, thank you. This is different than brake quiet. It's made for the internals of the brake system, and I'm sure you could use this on the backs of the pads to make sure that everything doesn't squeak. But it is a different compound, and it is specifically made for the internals. So keep that in mind. Don't just use Posi Quiet or whatever that stuff is called. on the internals of your calipers if you ever do rebuild. Make sure you're using the right stuff. I'm gonna finish this up, get this one done, clean them all up, and then we're gonna go and clear coat these. Time for the gloss clear coat. I bought one of these little planner holders. I think it'll be perfect for spray painting these. When you guys are doing complicated projects like this, the most important thing I can stress is get your order of operations correct. A couple of mistakes I made. I forgot to tape and plug up all the holes, tape everything off before I hung them on that little planner I found, which made things a little more difficult, added 10-20 minutes of work. And also, I could have been doing that inside in the air conditioning. It feels so good to be inside. So, it's about 100 degrees here today. But I finished up the clear coat. I'm not the best at rattle canning, honestly. I should have had Kyle do it, so whatever. But they came out pretty good. The biggest thing with the clear coat that I was looking for was not, super glossy, though it'll look nice with gloss. The main thing I was looking for was to protect the paint, provide a good layer over the decals to make sure they're sealed in correctly, and yada yada. But let's see one of these faces here. I think that came out pretty damn good. Cool. So, next steps, I'm going to be ceramic coating them, and I'm actually going to be doing 2 different layers. 2 layers of the C5 wheel armor from G-Technique. Their products are amazing. They do great stuff, and that's exactly what we use on our wheels. And we've gone over how to ceramic coat things, so I'm not going to bore you guys by filming that. But what I'm going to do is going to let these sit for cure for probably until later tonight, maybe 3 or 4 hours, and then I'm going to ceramic coat them. And then I'll probably do a couple cool little shots, and I'll overlay those right here. Again, I think they came out amazing. Huge shout out to Connecticut, or Central Connecticut Coatings. They did an amazing job, really good turnaround time. Everything came out awesome, and great advice as well. So cool. That's what we have for part 2 for these Brembos. And part 3, we're sourcing our pads, our lines, and our rotors, and then we're actually installing them on the car. And as you guys know, the rotors will have to upsize to the STI size. So we do have a bit of a surprise coming for you guys for what we're choosing for those pads, rotors, and lines, and it'll be a great video coming up next. So make sure if you guys are not following us or subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. Every little like, every little comment counts. Let us know how you think these came out. What do you think about the color white? They're gonna be hard to keep clean, I know, but I think they're gonna look really good on the car, so I can't wait to put them on. Thank you to everyone again for your support over the last, couple months and almost a year now that we've been doing this. So yeah, stay tuned for part 3, and we will see you in the next one.